My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 36 years old, and for most of my life, I believed loyalty was something you earned by sacrificing for family. 3 years ago, my younger brother crashed his third business. 2 months ago, my parents asked me to save him again. 3 weeks ago, they told me I owed him everything because I was the successful one. And 12 days ago, I found a document hidden inside my late grandmother's attic that changed everything. I thought I knew about my family. But before I tell you about that document, you need to understand how I became the family ATM. I grew up in a small town outside Springfield, Missouri. My father owned an auto repair shop. My mother worked part-time at the local bank. We weren't rich, but we got by. Then there was my brother, Kyle. Kyle was the golden child. The star quarterback. The guy everyone loved. The son my parents bragged about. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid who got straight A's and spent weekends helping Grandpa fix tractors. Whenever Kyle got into trouble, my parents found excuses. When he failed classes, it was because teachers were unfair. When he wrecked Dad's truck at 17, it was because the roads were slippery. When he dropped out of college after one semester, it was because the university didn't appreciate his talent. Excuses followed him everywhere. Responsibility never did. I left home at 18 and built a career in software development. Long hours. No shortcuts. No handouts. By 36, I owned a house, had savings, and finally felt secure. Kyle? He had failed 3 businesses, burned through 2 marriages, and somehow still lived as if consequences were optional. Yet every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday dinner, my parents repeated the same story. Ethan got lucky. Kyle just needs one more chance. One more chance. Those 4 words cost me nearly 10 years of my life. The first loan was $8,000. The second was $15,000. The third was $22,000. Every time Kyle promised to pay me back. Every time my parents swore it would be different. Every time I believed them. And every time, the money vanished. Then came the phone call that started this entire nightmare. My mother called on a rainy Tuesday evening. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. The kind of sweet that meant she wanted something. "Ethan," she said softly, "your brother needs help." The moment those words left her mouth, I knew trouble was coming. What I didn't know was that my family had already made a decision about my future without asking me. And hidden inside Grandma's abandoned attic was proof that they had been lying to me for years. I just hadn't found it yet. I arrived in Springfield that Saturday expecting another lecture about family loyalty. Instead, I walked into an ambush. My parents had invited relatives, family friends, and even Pastor Reynolds from their church. The dining room was packed. The moment I stepped inside, every conversation stopped. That was my first warning. My mother rushed over and hugged me tightly. "There he is," she announced proudly. "The man who's going to help save this family." The room erupted into smiles. I hadn't agreed to anything. My stomach tightened. Kyle sat at the head of the table wearing an expensive suit I knew he couldn't afford. A stack of papers rested beside him. Dad cleared his throat. "Son, Kyle has an incredible opportunity." I nearly laughed. I'd heard those exact words before every disaster. Kyle launched into a presentation about a new construction company. According to him, investors were interested. Profits would be huge, and this business would finally make him wealthy. Then came the catch. "We just need financing," he said. I folded my arms. "How much?" The room suddenly became very quiet. $300,000. I thought I'd misheard him. Then Kyle slid the papers toward me. My name was already typed onto the loan application. Co-borrower. Not potential co-borrower. Not proposed guarantor. Co-borrower. My parents had filled out everything before speaking to me. The signatures were blank. Everything else was complete. "You've got great credit," Mom said cheerfully. Dad nodded. The bank practically approved it already. I stared at the paperwork. Not a single person had asked what I wanted. They had simply assumed I would risk everything I'd built. Just like always. I looked around the room. Everyone was watching. Waiting. Expecting. The same pressure. The same trap. Then something caught my attention. A folded envelope sticking out of my father's briefcase. The handwriting on the front froze my blood. It belonged to my grandmother. The grandmother who passed away 2 years earlier. The same grandmother whose attic I had cleaned the week before. The same attic where I'd found an old brass key hidden inside a wooden box. Suddenly the pieces didn't fit. Why would Dad have one of Grandma's letters hidden away? And why had he quickly pushed the briefcase under the table the moment he saw me looking? For the first time that afternoon, I stopped thinking about Kyle's loan. Because deep down, I knew there was a bigger secret in this family. And somehow, Grandma had tried to leave me the truth. I just didn't know what it was yet. I didn't sign the loan papers. Not that day. Not after seeing my grandmother's handwriting on that envelope. I made an excuse, told everyone I needed time to review the documents, and left before dinner. The entire drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about the brass key. I had found it a week earlier while cleaning Grandma Eleanor's attic. It had been hidden inside an old wooden sewing box beneath a false bottom. At the time, I thought it was just an old keepsake. Now I wasn't so sure. That night I spread everything across my kitchen table. The key, a faded photograph of Grandma, and a small handwritten note I'd almost thrown away. The note contained only 6 words. The truth waits beneath the oak. I stared at it for several minutes. Then suddenly I remembered. Grandma's property still had an enormous oak tree behind the old barn. The same tree where she used to sit every evening and watch the sunset. The next morning, I drove back to Springfield. The property had been empty since her death. Nobody visited anymore. Not even my parents. I walked across the overgrown grass toward the giant oak. At first, I found nothing. Then I noticed a flat stone partially buried near the roots. My heart started pounding. I pulled it aside. Underneath was a small rusted metal hatch. Locked. Exactly the size for the brass key. My hands trembled as I inserted it. The lock clicked. Inside was a weatherproof lockbox. And inside the lockbox was something that changed my life forever. Documents. Dozens of them. Property records. Bank statements. Letters. And one sealed envelope with my name written across the front. Ethan Walker. I opened it immediately. The letter was dated 3 months before Grandma died. As I read, the blood drained from my face. Grandma explained that she feared certain family members would ignore her final wishes. After her death, she wrote that she trusted only one person to discover the box. Me. Then came the sentence that made my hands shake. Your parents never told you the truth about my estate. Attached was a copy of her will. Not the version I remembered hearing about after the funeral. A completely different version. Not Kyle. Not my parents. Me. Nearly $400,000. I stared at the number over and over. At Grandma's funeral, my parents told everyone there had been almost nothing left after medical bills. That had been a lie. The final page contained a handwritten warning. If you're reading this, someone has already hidden what belongs to you. I sat alone beneath the oak tree, surrounded by documents and silence. For 36 years, I believed my family favored Kyle. Now I was staring at proof that they had done something far worse. They hadn't just treated me differently. They had stolen from me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering how to keep the peace. I was wondering how much the truth was going to cost them. For 2 days, I told nobody what I'd found. Not my parents. Not Kyle. Not even my closest friends. I locked Grandma's documents in a safe and called an attorney named Sarah Mitchell. A probate specialist with a reputation for dismantling complicated estate fraud cases. She spent 3 hours reviewing the files. When she finally looked up, her expression had changed. This isn't a misunderstanding, Ethan. My stomach tightened. What is it? She slid 2 documents side by side across the table. One was the will from Grandma's lockbox. The other was the version filed with the county after her death. They were completely different. Different beneficiaries. Different asset distributions. Different signatures on the witness page. Sarah tapped the papers. Someone replaced the original. The room suddenly felt smaller. I had spent years believing my parents simply favored Kyle. Now an attorney was telling me someone may have altered Grandma's final wishes after she died. We started digging. The deeper we looked, the uglier it became. The lakefront property had been sold 6 months after Grandma's funeral. The proceeds had disappeared into multiple accounts. A large portion eventually landed in a business Kyle had launched shortly afterward. A business that failed within 18 months. I stared at his signature on page after page. The same signature I'd watched him use my entire life. The same signature that appeared on paperwork moving Grandma's assets out of the estate. Part of me wanted there to be another explanation. There wasn't. Then Sarah found something even worse. One witness listed on the filed will had been deceased before the document was supposedly signed. Dead. Months earlier. The silence in Sarah's office became unbearable. This could be fraud, she said quietly. Could be. The words barely mattered. I knew what I was looking at. My parents hadn't simply hidden money. Someone had built an entire lie around Grandma's death. That evening my phone rang. Mom. For the 10th time that week. I finally answered. Her voice was unusually cheerful. Honey, have you thought about Kyle's loan? I almost laughed. 3 days earlier, I would have felt guilty. Now I felt something else. Clarity. I asked one question. Mom, why did Grandma leave me that property? Silence. Complete silence. Then came a sharp intake of breath. A mistake. The kind people make when they know exactly what you're talking about. Ethan. She whispered. At that moment, I knew. She knew about the real will. And she knew I had found it. The line went dead. She had hung up. For the first time since Grandma passed away, my family wasn't controlling the story anymore. Because now I had the documents. I had the timeline. And I had an attorney preparing to uncover every missing dollar. What I didn't know was that within 48 hours, my father would show up at my front door carrying a secret. That would change everything, I thought. I knew about my family. 2 nights after my mother hung up on me, someone knocked on my front door. It was nearly 11 p.m. When I opened it, my father stood there alone. For the first time in my life, he looked old. Not tired. Not stressed. Defeated. He stepped inside without speaking and sat at my kitchen table. For several minutes, neither of us said a word. Then he reached into his jacket and placed a faded envelope in front of me. I should have given you this years ago, he said quietly. Inside was a letter from Grandma. Another one. But this wasn't about money. It was about me. As I read, tears filled my eyes. Grandma wrote that she knew. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love that should have been given freely. She wrote that she saw every Saturday I worked while Kyle played. Every sacrifice. Every loan. Every time I fixed a problem I didn't create. Then came the sentence that changed everything. Ethan, I left my estate to you. Because you were the only person in this family who never asked me for anything. I sat frozen. My father stared at the floor. Finally, he spoke. We knew about the will. The words landed like a hammer. He admitted everything. After Grandma died, my parents discovered the estate had been left to me. My mother panicked. Kyle was drowning in debt. His businesses were collapsing. She convinced herself Grandma had made a mistake. So they justified it. Just this once. Just enough to help Kyle. Then another withdrawal. Another transfer. Another lie. Until there was nothing left. One bad decision became 100. My father looked at me with tears in his eyes. We kept telling ourselves we were protecting the family. No, I replied. You were protecting Kyle. The silence that followed was unbearable. 3 months later, the legal case settled. The evidence was overwhelming. Properties had to be sold. Accounts liquidated. Repayment agreements signed. My parents lost most of what they had spent years trying to protect. Kyle declared bankruptcy. The family image they fought so hard to maintain disappeared almost overnight. And me? I finally stopped carrying them. I bought a small house near a lake 2 hours away. A quiet place. The kind Grandma would have loved. One evening, I sat on the dock watching the sunset when my phone buzzed. A message from my father. Only 7 words. Grandma was right about you. Sorry. This time, I answered. Today, I still keep Grandma's letters. Not as evidence. Not as weapons. But as reminders. For years, I believed family meant sacrifice. Grandma taught me something different. Real love doesn't demand that you destroy yourself to prove it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is protect your own future. Even when the people closest to you expect you to give it away. The inheritance wasn't the money. It wasn't the property. It wasn't the lawsuit. The real inheritance was finally understanding my worth. And unlike everything else my family tried to take, that was something nobody could ever steal.